Hello everybody and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And you might remember a few weeks ago I was talking about some of the ridiculous stuff that's in our local city magazine and newspapers and that sort of thing that really is telling about why people are so unhealthy. So the Columbus newspaper every so often has this section called Healthy Living. And all kinds of useless things that you can do in here to get sucked into the medical mill. But this little section I thought was worth sharing with you. It's called Eat Smart. All right, and it says, sweet dreams are made of cheese. All right, so this is, the name of the recipe is Collards and Portobello grilled cheese sandwich. And it's in a section called Healthy Living and Eat Smart. And I just want to tell you that this has, let me see here, the fat content is 26 milligrams of cholesterol, and fat is 25 grams of fat per serving. This is in the Healthy Living Eat Smart section. And here's a sandwich that you can eat that has 25 grams of fat per serving, 7 of them saturated. No wonder people are confused in America, because people are reading this and saying, oh, it's in the Healthy Living section, and it's vegetarian, because cheese theoretically is vegetarian. Now, as if that's not enough, every Wednesday we have the Food and Life section of the Columbus Dispatch. And so this morning, I'm filming this on Wednesday, the front page is uniquely Brazilian. And we have a couple of Brazilian restaurants here in Columbus, so they don't really talk about the Brazilian restaurants, but the first recipe that they're talking about is this Brazilian rib dish. And you will be anxious to see that per serving, it has 1,105 calories, and 93 grams of fat, 27 saturated. 27 grams of saturated fat. That's the cover story of the Food and Life section. Then we have this Chili's Lime Fresh Black Bean Dip, which sounds like it would be healthy. So I figured out the per serving is 4 tablespoons is a serving, 7 grams of fat. And if you were to have a serving of like vegetable chips with it, that would be 14 grams of fat. And so you would be eating a total of 21 grams of fat in some chips and 4 tablespoons of bean dip. Not good. And so I won't go through the whole rest of this with you, but you get the idea. Really, what's promoted as healthy or vegetarian or something of that nature isn't actually so very healthy at all. All right, so, and watch for those things, because I have friends who say sometimes, I love those vegetarian recipes they have in the Columbus Dispatch. It's gotten my house eating more plant food. Well, if you're eating stuff that has 90 grams or 100 grams of fat per serving or 20-some grams of fat per serving, you might as well just go on ahead and have the cheeseburger. You're not a whole lot better off because you're eating that level of plant fat. All right, so next thing on the list is we posted today on our website our conference flyer for November 9th through 11th this year. We have some amazing speakers. Our two, a lot of our staff folks are there, our business partners like Dr. Peter Bregan, the amazing psychiatrist, and Eileen Kopsaftis, our physical therapist business partner. But our two big guest speakers are Anthony Lim, who is the medical director of the McDougall program and also is a medical staff member at True North Health in Santa Rosa. And also, we're bringing Cheryl Atkinson here, who is a news anchor who does investigative reporting, and she's going to talk about what she's uncovered in all kinds of areas of medicine, ranging from statin drugs to psychiatric drugs and vaccines. And we're going to have a lot of panel discussions, lots more audience interaction. And we're going to have some breakout sessions during which you'll be able to do things like culinary excellence for the home cook, section 1 and section 2 with Chef Del Shrove, common pain issues and why they happen, optimal fitness and injury prevention, the heart of being helpful, Dr. Peter Bregan's new peer-to-peer therapy program, 2 modules of that, weight loss strategies that work, how to do habit change, diet and lifestyle intervention and healthcare practice. And here's what's really fabulous. fabulous. At the end of the conference, for people who attend, we're going to give you a $500 gift certificate, which is good toward a selected group of programs that you can choose from. So this is going to be an unusual situation due to the hands-on learning opportunities that people will have at this conference. And actually, everybody will be getting back a certificate for more money than they paid for a ticket. Having said that, in April, tickets are cheapest, so this is the time to get them. Another thing that I always pull some questions that I get both on the YouTube channel and through email, because I think it's good to share this feedback with you. One is, why do you read from the paper? Well, because it would take an awful long time to memorize all this stuff before I get in front of the camera. But now for a meaningful question. What do you say when someone says, I'm eating a ketogenic diet and I feel great? Well, sometimes you don't say anything at all. And let me tell you, that might surprise you a little bit, but one thing I've learned to do in all the years that I've been in this business is to wait for teachable moments. In other words, the fact that somebody is talking about the way they eat or what they're doing is not an invitation to jump all over them to try to correct their thinking. And I remember one time not too long ago, I was in a social setting and somehow the topic of diet came up, and this woman said to me, yeah, my husband and I are eating a lot more bacon these days. I said, oh, okay, well listen, I think intermission's almost over, we should get back in the theater. And the people with me were flabbergasted that I didn't take that opportunity to correct her thinking. That's how you can make a lot of enemies, you guys. And one thing that I did that in the beginning, and I paid the price for it. I think there are still a few people that if they see me at the shopping mall, they duck into the jewelry store hoping not to make eye contact. So the first thing is wait for teachable moments. But the second thing is, if you are going to talk about something like this, and somebody might ask the question in a different way. For example, I've heard you talking about eating a plant-based diet. I'm eating a keto diet and I feel great. So tell me what's wrong with that. Now that would be an invitation for you to respond. And I always respond to something like that. And I would say a couple of things. The first thing is to please understand the difference between feeling better and getting better. I mean, a lot of people tell me that a cocktail makes them feel better. Well, I'm sure it does, but I don't think we want to recommend cocktails to help people improve their health. That's clearly not a good idea. The other thing is, I've written a referenced article on ketogenic diets, both talking about the situations, very specific situations in which they're advisable and there are benefits, and also very clearly outlining the side effects. And as with anything that has to do with your health, what you're trying to do is make sure that anytime you do something, the benefit you're going to get is worth the risk that you're going to take. Here's another question. I got this from an email. What is your take on Dr. Mark McCosey? A relative suffering from prostate cancer asked me about Last Resort Cure's book. Been counseling with him on a whole foods plant-based diet. I've referred him to your website and other reputable docs. This McCosey worries me because he sells stuff. Well, here's my response to this. I don't know anything about this doctor. And we can't possibly here evaluate all of the books and doctors and websites. I mean, my gosh, we'd have to add 20 more staff people, but I can teach you a thinking pattern about how to look at this. The way that you judge anybody, by the way, who gives health advice is not by whether or not they sell things. There's nothing unethical about selling things, particularly when people are upfront about it. I mean, people come in here, we have a store, and we sell food, and we sell a lot of things in our store, books and things of that nature. So nobody comes in here and doesn't know we sell things. So I don't have any opposition to somebody selling things. I have an opposition to people who sell things and don't make it clear. Think oncologists who have the chemotherapy concession. But anyway, I digress. The value of anybody is whether or not the information the person is providing is based on evidence. So to respond to this question, what you want to do is evaluate the information that this particular doctor is providing. Look up the references. Do they support the statements being made? Are the studies well structured? Are the results being accurately reported? Are these outlier studies, or do they represent the preponderance of the evidence? And if you don't know how to do this, that's what we do here. And I think it's important for everybody to know how to do this, because if you don't learn how to do this kind of evaluation on your own, and anybody can learn how to do it, you're just going to be forever parroting whatever other people tell you, believing this and believing that. I had somebody email me the other day talking about believing in a plant-based diet. You don't believe in a plant-based diet. you scientifically prove that a plant-based diet is the right thing to eat. Then there's believing is not what this should be all about. I think there's some well-meaning people out there talking about what they believe. I don't necessarily know that they're contributing to advancing healthcare. One last thing, and then I want to get into an issue to talk about here, is the Diet and Lifestyle Intervention course starts again in June, and we have some great certification course packages only until April 15th, and then that's it. So if you're thinking of doing something with us, the lowest prices on conference are going to be in April, and the best prices on certification and educational packages are going to be in the first 2 weeks of April. All right? So let's move on to what I wish I could stop talking about, but you just can't, and that's this vaccine issue. And it makes people apoplectic. And I don't actually, contrary to what many people think, like inviting controversy into my life. I wish that I could stay away from it. But once you start looking into these issues, you find yourself in that uncomfortable position of wanting to tell the truth to people, and it just generates controversy. So here's what's going on. During the last 10 years, the United States and other developed countries have experienced an increase in the number of mumps cases, mostly in vaccinated individuals and in communities that have a very high vaccination rate. So a research group recently analyzed data from 6 studies that looked at vaccine efficacy, and they determined that the mumps vaccine wanes someplace between 16 and 51 years after the last dose of vaccine at an average of 27 years. And what they did when they looked at when they were looking at the data, is they looked at outbreaks amongst adolescents and young adults in the 1980s and late 1980s and early 1990s, and then 2006 to the present. And they said the outbreaks were at expectable time, anticipated times, a couple, 3 decades after the last dose. So how do these people think that we ought to solve this? Well, of course, more boosters. The researchers suggest a 3rd dose of vaccine at 18 years of age, then booster doses throughout an adult's lifetime. And that's the way that we're going to prevent mumps in older people. They propose clinical trials to test this idea. Well, my question when I hear this kind of thing, and this is not the only vaccine where this is going on, is how many boosters can you actually give a person? I mean, how many vaccines can you give? I mean, I was at lunch today, I was talking about this issue with a friend of mine, and I said, one of these days, what we're going to do is we're all going to start walking around with an IV pole and a drip bag full of vaccine and other drugs that we're supposed to take. What are we going to do? Port everybody at the age of 65 so we can drip drugs into their system? I mean, this is getting insane. Currently, most children receive 5 doses of whooping cough vaccine before the age of 7, but within 5 years of the last dose, the efficacy rate drops to 71%, and the number of children and adults who currently are getting whooping cough suggests that it wanes even more over time. An outbreak of whooping cough in fully vaccinated preschoolers, which was reported in a Medscape article, caused researchers to conclude that, quote, the situation raises concerns about inadequate protection against pertussis in an age group believed to be well protected by acellular pertussis vaccination. The authors added that this episode calls into question the effectiveness of vaccines for preschoolers and that, quote, recent pertussis vaccination should not dissuade physicians from diagnosing, testing, or treating persons with compatible illness for pertussis. In other words, the vaccine may not even be effective in the short term. So now we've got mumps doesn't work. We've got whooping cough that doesn't work. The authors noted that the number of whooping cough cases jumped sixfold from 7,867 cases to over 48,000 cases between 2000 and 2012. And they've suggested that perhaps what's really going on is that the virus is mutating, which makes the vaccine even less likely to be effective. A Cochrane review concluded that, quote, whooping cough epidemics in the pre-vaccine era, before the 1940s, occurred at 2 to 5 year intervals, and these cycles have continued in the vaccine era. The Cochrane reviewers also noted that the incidence of whooping cough has actually increased during the last 20 years in spite of widespread vaccination. And the same is true for measles. A 2014 study showed that measles, rubella, and measles, mumps, rubella, MMR, vaccines do not prevent these diseases even in highly vaccinated populations. in China, in spite of widespread and free vaccination campaigns that resulted in very high vaccination rates. By the way, one of the reasons that there's such a high vaccination rate in China is it's a communist country, and you do what they tell you to do. In 2008, there were 12,782 cases of measles reported in just one county with almost 100% vaccination rate. In 1985, back here in the United States, researchers reported an outbreak of measles in adolescents in Corpus Christi, Texas, in a fully vaccinated population. They wrote, quote, "We conclude that outbreaks of measles can occur in secondary schools even when more than 99% of the students have been vaccinated and more than 95% are immune." In Montana, 1995, a measles outbreak in a population that had achieved a vaccination rate of 98.7% led researchers to report, quote, "This outbreak suggests that measles transmission may persist in some settings despite appropriate implementation of the current measles elimination strategy." One thing that infuriates me is when the very small percentage of people who don't vaccinate their children get blamed for all this, because clearly this is not the problem. Fully vaccinated, almost 100% populations are still getting outbreaks of these diseases we're supposed to be vaccinated for. Well, parents and others often ask me, what should I do about vaccines? And my job is not to make decisions for people. I'm pretty crystal clear about that. It's to provide information to facilitate decision making. What I will say is that the studies cited for this article indicate that the vaccines are not as effective as we're told they are. The damage awards from the vaccine court indicates that the vaccines aren't as safe as we're told that they are. So like all matters regarding health, vaccinations should involve informed medical decision making. I mean, you have to decide what you want to do about this type of information that I provide. And I am aware, and I know you are too, that it's very difficult to go against the grain. It makes life more difficult when you decide not to just do what you're told to do. I have personal experience with that. But anyway, I put out the information, you make the decision. That's the latest on this issue came across in my newsfeed this week. Well, that's all for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it, and I'll be back to you on Thursday with more news.